Okay, we have 20 minutes for the poetry of outrage. I better get busy. Thank you very much. I want to preface this by saying I understand that most of the people in this room are, by necessity and by professionalism, working within, or many of the people are working within the construct of juvenile justice. You are engaged in trying to humanize that system, in trying to make it function better, and trying to make it address the needs of juveniles within the context of our juvenile justice system. So some of what I say will seem to be in opposition to everything you're trying to do. And I don't mean for that to be the case. Everybody's got to get up in the morning, and they have a choice of either making the world better or making it worse. And I don't mean to be more hopeful than I can be, because that wouldn't be my nature. But nor do I mean to suggest, by my almost transparent lack of hope in the future, that precludes any of us from trying to do the right thing. See Camus' Resistance, Rebellion, and Death. See the idea of only behaving in an ethical way do you have the slightest possibility of living with a certain amount of dignity. You have to choose every day. You have to either make the world better or worse, given the cards that are dealt. But the last thing I'd want to do is waste the 20 minutes on not acknowledging the cards that have been dealt. That's what I'm good at. So let me bring you down for 20 minutes, and then you can all go to separate rooms and try to figure out how to do what you can do with these shitty cards. Because these are the cards we've been dealt. In brief, for 30 years, this country has mistaken profit, and short-term profit at that, for the metric by which you judge a just and verdant society. We've listened to Wall Street since 1980. We've accepted, as we accepted from the president at the time, the cynicism that says the poor will always be with us. We fought a war on poverty, and poverty won. I don't know if you all remember that bit of witticism from Ronald Reagan. Since 1980, we've basically accepted the notion that we can measure progress by profit. Progress as a society has nothing to do with profit. I am not a Marxist. You can't be a Marxist in the 21st century and go very far. The idea that capitalism is not a tool for generating mass wealth is ridiculous. It has proven to be the only viable tool for large societies to generate mass wealth. It is one of the tools in the toolbox that we must use, like a screwdriver, like an awl, like a saw. It's something that we can use to build the house that is our society. But it's not the only tool, and it's certainly not the tool by which you would measure whether or not your society has moral meaning. And yet, there are people and whole political parties who would suggest to you that it is a metric for morality, that the market will take care of a social problem, that the market will protect the long-term health of an industry, that the market will make sure that we all share on some level, maybe not equally, but share in the social and economic compact that is our country. And profit will do none of these things. The market won't do none of these things. The market will maximize profit. How profit is distributed, what it's used for, whether it addresses the needs of society as a whole, whether it incorporates all of us into society as a whole, these are questions for our body politic and for us as moral people. That we would suggest, in some sort of idiotic libertarian way, that the money will somehow route itself to a moral end is an absurdity that we have swallowed whole for 30 years. And now we're reaping the whirlwind. So, can you get this back to juvenile justice in 15 minutes? I sure can. I sure can. I came up as a reporter in Baltimore. I very much respected good police work. I wrote a book about it called Homicide. It was one of the first long-term projects I worked on. I followed the best detectives while they did something that everybody in society would like to see the police do, which is solve murders. They did it pretty well in Baltimore. The best detectives were really good at their jobs. I respected them a lot. I also came into it respecting the drug war. Certainly the war against illegal narcotics and metabolites. I guess cocaine was becoming big at the time I became a police reporter. I won't claim to the hypocrisy that suggests that I thought all drugs were bad or all drugs needed to be regulated by the government. You are looking at somebody who is on and off smoked marijuana for most of his life. I pay my taxes. I pay a lot of taxes. I'm happy to pay more taxes. I work in Hollywood. I'm supposed to pay more taxes. If marijuana were controlled by, say, Philip Reynolds, if it wasn't the purview of black and brown people, it would be legal. It might be regulated in the same way that alcohol is regulated. It would do a lot less damage than alcohol. The war on marijuana is the tip of the sham of the war on drugs. But excluding marijuana, and maybe a couple of other what they used to call gateway drugs when I was taking anti-drug courses in elementary school, and concentrating on the war against serious narcotics, I came into it believing, as a police reporter, that these things were bad and that they needed to be pursued, and that drug dealing was the great scourge of the inner city. It took me a while, and I had to go to a drug corner for a year and see how the war on drugs actually landed in an inner city neighborhood. But at some point, myself and my coworker, who was a 20-year veteran of the Baltimore Police Department, who had done homicide investigation and also wiretap cases against major drug traffickers, and then had done 7 years teaching in the Baltimore City schools, we came to the inevitable conclusion after writing The Corner, which was this: the war on drugs is a war on the poor. That's all it is. It is nothing more than a war on the poor. It may have begun at some fundamental level as a war on dangerous narcotics. It has long ago morphed into an assault on the underclass that bears no relation to morality. Now, how can you say that when you know what drugs do to people? Well, the drugs do it to people anyway, and the drugs are going to do it to people anyway. You have not taken back a single corner in Baltimore with all of your draconian drug laws. You've not taken back a single prison. If you can't win the war on drugs in a prison, where are you going to win it? When I started as a police reporter in the early 80s, the federal prison population was a fifth of what it is now, and 34% of the inmates, the prisoners, were violent offenders. Anyone want to take a shot at what the level of violence is now among a prison population that's 5 times that size? 7%. We're jailing more of us than any single political entity in modern human history for less violence than ever before. That's what the drug war gives you. Good news, though, we've turned it into a short-term profit center. We've privatized it, meaning we can now monetize the pain of the poor after we lock them up. Somebody can make money off this shit. And that's what we've been doing. Now, has it taken back a single drug corner? Have we made any element of our society, including our prisons, drug-free? I'll tell you what it has done. It's given a bunch of white middle-class parents a very comfortable level of distance, emotional distance, if not actual distance from the drugs. I'm a parent of 2. I can feel, even though it's an illusion, that drugs, that heroin and cocaine are further from my children because I'm willing to stand here and sacrifice the lives of people of black and brown color in the inner cities of Baltimore and D.C. I can stay out in Howard County, and because I have this sanction against drugs, this legal sanction, drugs are just this much further from my children. I'm willing to trade on the lives of everybody whose neighborhoods have been turned into a free fire zone in Baltimore or in Washington, but that's their problem. And as far as Mexico and the northern states of Mexico, I'm willing to fight to the last Mexican. I'm willing to fight my drug war to the last Mexican before I'm willing to admit that drugs is a therapeutic and a medical problem, and that that's how